The following review may contain spoilers. The use of music is interesting. It comes in and out very quickly and jarringly. For example, when the movie's title appears on screen, it's accompanied with a quick burst of music, and then the title and music just abruptly disappear. Can't say I've ever seen this in a movie before, and it was different and original. One of the leads here, Jane Addams, is very good. She portrays a mentally unstable woman very authentically and was a standout performance in the film. In the beginning of the film, the actress is just moping around her house. She even goes outside, and I think she grabs some dirt and just clenches it in each of her hands. At this point, I actually had to pause and look at the time code. The movie was 13 minutes in with pretty much nothing happening at all, and this was a bad sign. The rest of the movie continues this way with basically no story or plot, and of course this movie is supposed to be a mood or atmospheric piece. If you decide not to write a traditional script, well, then you have to make up for it with other aspects of filmmaking to keep the audience engaged. But the director, Amy Seimetz, doesn't really do that here. A lot of the shots just look like basic cinematography and lighting setups. There's no distinct filmmaking style. It's just not apparent here. She's not going for a disturbing look. It's not really there for the most part. It might be there in patches, but as a whole, there's no real cohesion. There's no really distinct look here. I'd like to compare this movie to two other films. First, I'd like to compare this film to Jonathan Glazer's masterpiece, Under the Skin. That movie also has a non-traditional script, as it's vague and weird at times, not as vague and weird as this film. But what makes that movie so engaging are the visuals. The visuals are always compelling in that movie and keeps the audience engaged. There's also a lot of sex, disturbing violence, this weird stuff with aliens and like a black ooze. So visually, we have a lot of things to latch our brains onto in place of traditional storytelling. The second film is David Lynch's Mulholland Drive. Again, it's a film that is very abstract, avant-garde, what have you, but this film actually worked as an atmospheric mood piece. It had plenty of things that the viewer could, dig into in place of the clear, understandable story, like when Naomi Watts at the end appears with no makeup and she looks all haggard. It leaves the audience with so many questions, like, was the rest of the film just a hallucination or a dream? And then there was that weird B-movie stuff with the soft glow lighting. It's just visual things for your brain to chew on because, again, we're dealing with non-traditional storytelling, and the audience needs something in place of the traditional story. Now let's talk about what kind of visual filmmaking techniques the director of She Dies Tomorrow uses. Well, there's a few moments of red and blue lights shining on the actors' faces. Of course, they never explain what this is, and with this kind of avant-garde film, we don't expect them to. But the problem is it's just not that interesting. Even the way the red and blue is shot is just kind of bland. I felt like they could have shot this in a more disturbing or unsettling way. After that, I can't really think of anything else here. There's no other visual filmmaking elements or motifs that just keep the audience engaged. You just have to throw more things at the audience to chew on because we just need something in place of a clear traditional story. If an avant-garde experimental film ends up working, the film is probably digging into your subconscious somehow, like there's something else going on, there's another layer, either thematically or the film is making a statement artistically. You'll stay to the end and try to make sense of it all later, maybe read up on some analysis, or maybe you'll even want to watch the movie again. She Dies Tomorrow leaves you with none of these impulses. The only possible result of having very little story and very little in terms of interesting visual motifs is boredom. And that's all you have here. This film is just excruciatingly boring. They just had to give us something instead of just a bunch of scattered conversations about death or whatever. that we can't even make heads or tails of. My final rating for She Dies Tomorrow is 0.5 star. As of the making of this video, the Rotten Tomatoes percentage for She Dies Tomorrow is 82%. No. Just some commentary on the Rotten Tomatoes blurbs. A few of the critics say this film has some comedic elements. I don't know what movie they were watching. There is not an ounce of humor in this whole movie. It reminds me of the time when I was young and I lived in New York City. Every art house film I would ever go to, there'd be some whack job cracking up through the whole movie, even though absolutely nothing funny was happening on screen. I remember watching the Salma Hayek Frida Kahlo biopic, and some insane idiot was cracking up from beginning to end. You laughing when nobody else is doesn't mean you get it. This filmmaker has a long way to go in terms of working on her craft if she wants to make abstract avant-garde mood pieces like this, but at least she'll always have film critics to eat this stuff up.